However, after bishop takes b6, there's this discovery with bishop to b4 check. And now white has to take the bishop, and then very simply, queen takes queen on g7. And I'm just up a queen for 2 pieces, and this should be winning pretty routinely. That's why here Ian played g4, takes, bishop to e4, and now this move, rook to h3. And here, it took me a second to notice, I mean, what I played in the game was actually quite strong with bishop e7, because like in the other variation, it's very weird to see this line with queen g7, rook h7, and now, once again, bishop takes b6, walks into this bishop b4. So it took me quite a while to see this, but luckily I saw it relatively quickly, which is why I played bishop to e7. Now Ian did in fact blunder here when he took on g7. Really, the only move here is probably queen to e3, bishop d5. Now h5 castles, and knight to c3. And we weren't really sure, actually, sorry, not castles, I think. Okay, something like this at any rate. And the position it's very complicated because white has threats with knight b5 and knight takes a7, since the queen and the bishop are both attacking the knight on b6. And it's just an absolute mess. I don't think either of us, even in the post-mortem, knew what exactly was going on. So this was certainly the right continuation, but I got a bit lucky when Ian blundered by playing this move, queen g5 takes g7. And the point is that now, once again, this move, rook h7, is incredibly strong. Originally, Ian, like myself, thought he could take this knight on b6, and once again, just bishop b4, even bishop takes h4 is another check, and you pick up the queen on g7 again.
Did you immediately realize that you had blundered?
Yes, well, pretty much right away. I was a bit shocked when he played queen takes g7, because I assumed he had seen rook h7, but you never know, and well, it's a long tournament, so I'll take some luck when I can get it. Yeah, so here Ian used most of his time, and he ended up playing queen e5. If you play queen g8, for instance, king d7, this is another variation. Now you can actually take on b6, because there are no checks and you can't pick up the queen. And if I take the bishop on b6, then the rook on a8 is hanging. However, after rook takes g8, bishop takes c7, king takes c7, white has to play g5. Both these pawns are hanging here. But after g5, bishop f5, if the rook moves, for instance, to h1, then I can very simply just take the pawn on g5 with the bishop, because if you take back, the rook on h1 is hanging. That's why in the game Ian played queen to e5, queen takes, bishop takes, and now I played the move bishop takes h4. And here I think Ian, he made a slight blunder when he played knight g3. I thought during the game that bishop g3 was a little bit better, but even so, after takes, knight takes, bishop g6, very simply I'm going to put the knight on d5, and it should, technically it should be losing, but there's still some hope, I think, whereas in the game it really goes from being worse to just lost in a couple of moves after the move knight to g3. Now I played this nice move knight d7, bishop d4, and now let's move bishop to f3. I think the way Ian played with g5 is really the only chance. Essentially, I'm threatening to take, and you can't protect the knight on g3 and keep the pawn on g4. So that's why he played g5, bishop g4, g6, and now rook to h6. And it's just this rook is completely overloaded. It can't protect the knight on g3. So that's why Ian sacrificed on h4 and played this move, rook to c3. Now here, the move I played in the game ended up working, but I would probably classify it as being a blunder because I completely overlooked the potential counterplay which could have occurred in the game. So I played bishop f3, takes, and for some reason I just completely forgot about this move, bishop to h3. And at first I was quite nervous because it looks like white is going to get a lot of counterplay. For instance, if I play this move king to e7, there's this very strong reply with rook e3. And the threat is just knight f5 check. In fact, this might already be very good for white here. I don't know, white might even be winning in this position. So luckily, I was able to come up with this resource at the board with knight e5, rook f6, and now let's move knight to d3. Now Ian played king to e2. If you go king f1 here, I have this move rook to f4 check. And after takes, and then I guess g7, king f7, and I just pick off the pawn, and it's completely winning. So that's why Ian played this one, king to e2, knight to f4, king to e3. Now I have this move e5 here. And pretty much everything I think is losing here. For instance, if he plays g7, I have this knight d5 fork, taking f6, and it covers a g8 square. And I guess in the game, rook f7 is probably the best try, perhaps, but once again, it just really doesn't quite work. So rook d3, king e4, rook takes g3, bishop d7, king f8, and he played this move bishop f5. If g7 here, I can play knight to h5, and I'm just going to win the pawn on g7. So this is just completely winning. So Ian played bishop f5, knight takes g6, and now he played this move rook to g7. If he were to take on g6 here, I can very simply take rook f8, king c7, rook takes a8, and just king b6. And very simply, I'm going to go rook g2 next move, and it's impossible to hang on to the queenside pawn, so this is just a completely winning endgame. So that's why in this position Ian played rook g7. And at first it took me a while to notice how strong rook b8 actually is. Because there's a very unusual maneuver here after, well, he played b4, b5, bishop takes g6, and now there's this move rook g5. And the problem here is white you can't move the rook off the g-file because the bishop hangs. And, well, if you exchange a set of rooks, it's losing. So pretty much nothing works here, and white's king can't get forward to d6 at all. So that's why Ian resigned here, and I think it's just white's in Zugzwang. White has no moves here.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Did you come to your choice of this Hikaru for today?
I sort of reached the conclusion that I should play something solid against Ian. I seem to be known as a bit of an aggressive player, but I think Ian is even more aggressive than I am. So I thought I should play something solid, give him the chance to create complications, and he did, and I seem to be on the right end of them. So I think overall it was a very good choice considering.
Okay. Okay, and considering your upcoming two solid players, what do you think? I mean, two draws is probably going to end in a share first, or are you going to take a lot of risks to even to win this one on your own? Or?
I've seen a lot of tournaments where there's someone who tends to be ahead by maybe a half point or a point going into the last round or two, and it seems like when you approach it with just the I'm going to play really safe and draw, somehow it seems like that doesn't tend to work out most of the time. The players get a little bit too passive, and then you end up in a long middle game or end game, and it seems like something seems to go wrong. So I'm just going to approach it the way I have every game this tournament, in the sense that see what happens. Just play the way I would play, even if this was the first round, or even if I was on -5. So I'll just play the same way that I've been playing the tournament.